What's going on, SixPackAbs.com? It's Thomas DeLauer, your lead nutritionist and creator of Science-Based Six-Pack, the world's leading intermittent fasting program. Today I'm talking about the two different kinds of fat that you have in your body, brown fat and white fat. Now, one of these fats is good for you and actually helps you burn fat, and the other fat just hangs out on your body doing unsightly things and making you miserable. So let's talk about what they are. First and foremost, let's start with white fat. You see, white fat is the basic fat that we think of when we think of fat. It's the most prevalent fat on your body, and it's also the most prevalent energy source on your body. It is quite literally the fat that just hangs out in the subcutaneous tissues of your body. It hangs out underneath the skin, but it also hangs out in the visceral areas of your body. So it hangs out around the organs. This is known as visceral fat. Now, interestingly enough, the reason that it's called white fat is because it almost is white when you look at it. It's a very pale yellow. It's the general kind of fat that you think of when you think of a fat cell. And the reason that it's so white is because it has very little blood flow. It doesn't have a lot of capillaries. It doesn't have a lot of blood flowing through it. And it also doesn't have a lot of mitochondria. Now, mitochondria, in case you haven't seen my other videos, is the energy powerhouse within a cell. The mitochondria is what actually creates energy. So basically what I'm saying is this white fat is not metabolically active. It just kind of hangs out there. And the real purpose of this white fat is to insulate us. So it's there if we're too cold. So it's insulating us from the cold. But it's also doing some other things when it comes down to when it's too warm out. It's also insulating us from the heat. But the other thing that it does is it protects us from trauma. So if you're playing a sport where you're gonna have a lot of impact, or maybe you're falling down a lot, fat obviously is something that's going to help you there, but you don't need that much of it. So here's the problem. Too much of this stuff ends up just being useless. We know that. That's why we have an obesity epidemic, and we're really talking about it as a country. But there also is some mechanism of white fat that a lot of people don't talk about, and that's the fact that it does have hormone receptors. So it does play a part in the body. It does play a part in how our body produces estrogen, and it does play a part in how our body processes leptin, which is the communication between the fat and the brain. So don't get me wrong, we do need white fat. We need it for that insulation, and we need it for those hormonal responses. But it's not always what we want when it comes down to looking our best and feeling our best. Now, interestingly enough, though, when we look at the white fat that is in the subcutaneous areas of our body, that's directly underneath the skin, it doesn't play as much of a role negatively on our health as we would think. In fact, there was a study that was done in the New England Journal of Medicine that took a look at this. What they did is they took some subjects and they put them through a liposuction therapy where they actually removed white fat from their subcutaneous tissues, about 23 pounds on average. And then what they ended up looking at was their blood markers, things like blood pressure, things like some of their cholesterol levels, everything like that. Believe it or not, when they took out the subcutaneous white fat, there wasn't that much of a change in those. Not saying that it's not unhealthy to be overweight, but it was saying that that sub-Q white fat really does just kind of sit there and not do a whole lot. On the contrary, when we look at that same white fat that is in a visceral sense, that same white fat that's just hanging out around our organs like our liver and our stomach and all of that, that had a huge impact on overall health. So sometimes it's the white fat that you can't even see that's causing the most damage to your body. On that note, let's talk about the good fat. Let's talk about brown fat, the kind that we want. I want you to simply think of it like this. Brown fat is good because it's energy dense. It's dark. The reason it's dark is because it has lots of blood flow, lots of minerals, and lots of mitochondria. Remember, mitochondria produces energy. Energy produces heat. So when we have brown fat that is dark and has lots of blood flow and a lot of mitochondria, we're generating heat from it. That's the whole idea. White fat is there just to chill out and insulate us, whereas brown fat is actually metabolically active and actually causes our metabolism to increase simply because it has blood flow and it's creating energy. Its sole purpose is to keep us warm outside of just shivering. Here's a fun fact. Babies cannot shiver. They don't have the neurological development yet to truly understand when it's cold out and how their bodies should shiver. So biologically, they have a lot of brown fat in the very beginning. So when they're first born, their levels of brown fat are very high because they're keeping the baby warm, since the baby can't shiver yet. As the baby grows older, those levels of brown fat start to go down, their levels of white fat start to go up, as of course they're eating more processed food and this typical worldly diet that we're eating these days. But that gives you a good indicator of how metabolically active this brown fat is. If you have good amounts of brown fat that are derived from muscle, you can actually burn more fat. How about them apples? More fat equals burning more fat. So now we have a basic understanding of white fat versus brown fat. Let's talk about how you can start getting rid of the white fat and get more of the brown fat. Well, getting rid of white fat is simple. Honestly, it's probably preaching to the choir when I say this, but things like intermittent fasting, ketosis, diets like that are great for getting rid of the white fat. But what you really want to do is get rid of the white fat, but then also increase the brown fat. And one of the best ways that you can increase brown fat is by doing high intensity interval training, doing quick bouts of intense exercise. You see, it produces a particular protein known as irisin. And what this irisin does is it actually stimulates the white fat to create more mitochondria, turning that white fat into more of a beigeish brown fat. So you actually can convert white to brown fat. The thing is as you exercise more and do more intense exercise, your body adapts. And your body starts saying, well, wait a minute, this white fat is not really necessary now. I need the brown fat. So it starts making the change itself. Your body calls the shots and says, forget it, we need to take this white fat and make it into brown fat. And it all comes down to that simple thing called irisin. Okay, the next thing that you can do is you start exposing yourself to really cold temperatures now and then. That means take ice baths, take some cold showers, go get in a cryo tank for a little bit. Believe it or not, it makes a big difference because again, your body's adapting. Your body's exposed to these cold temperatures, so it says, wait a minute, I need more brown fat to be metabolically active so that at rest, this body burns more calories and generates more heat. Then lastly, you really want to get serious about regulating your sleep. You may not know this, but the physiology of brown fat is almost directly dictated by melatonin. And melatonin is only produced when we're truly in a good circadian rhythm. So you want to be paying attention to your sleep patterns. You want to try to go to bed at the same time as much as you possibly can every night. Okay? You want to try to get up close to the same time every morning. It makes a big, big difference. And if you need some tips on how to improve your melatonin in your body, well, let me give you a couple. First off, like I said, go to bed around the same time every night. But second of all, don't be looking into your phone absorbing all this blue light a couple hours before bed. It slows down your brain's ability to produce melatonin, thereby making it so you have a harder time falling asleep, harder time registering the same pattern, and thereby decreasing your brown fat and increasing your white fat. So there you have it, SixPackAbs.com. I'm sure you didn't know that you had two different kinds of fat in your body, but now you do. You shouldn't be afraid of all fat. You just want the fat that's brown, not the fat that's white. As always, make sure you keep it locked in here and let us know what other videos you want to see. See you in the next one.